Sorry about that, everyone. My camera just shut off, so we're going to pick up where we left off. So, my ex-husband did convince my youngest daughter to go live with him, and I allowed it because she was at the age where she could make the decision for herself if that's what she wanted to do. Even though I had custody of her, legally, she could decide for herself. So she went to live with him, and he immediately went to work on my oldest daughter, my granddaughter, trying to get them to come live with him as well. Also during that time, I would go away on a trip, and I would come home, and I would notice that sentimental things were missing or misplaced. And I was thinking at first that I was just stressed out and I was misplacing things and being forgetful. Then I started to realize that these are things that were gifts that he had given me in the past, or things that didn't have really monetary value, but they were sentimental to me and they were special to me. And one by one, these things started disappearing. And like I said, I thought that I was losing my mind from all this stress. Because at the same time, I was having these fainting spells. They were happening at home, they were happening at work, and I knew it was stress related. And one time I fainted and I fell in my kitchen and hit my head on the tile. And the ambulance came and they took me to the hospital, and they ran tests and they could not figure out why I was having these fainting spells. So also during that time, I was getting in trouble at work, and I actually almost lost my job. So there was just a lot going on, and I thought that I was losing my mind until I came home one day and I went into my bedroom, which was, as far as I knew, my ex-husband had never been in my bedroom. And there in the closet, in the middle of the floor, was something that belonged to him. And I knew at that point that I wasn't going crazy and misplacing things, that this person was coming into my house and taking things and moving things to make me feel like I'm going crazy, and it was working. So I started to see a therapist, and I learned that I was suffering from complex post-traumatic stress syndrome. PTSD is something that people get when maybe they go off to war and they watch someone's leg get blown off, or you're carjacked, or something traumatic happens to you, and then later on it's triggered by a sound or some kind of memory, and you become paranoid, and you become depressed, and you become hypervigilant, you become aggressive. Complex PTSD is practically the same thing, except that its cause is not one traumatic event. Its cause is years of trauma. So an abusive childhood, or an abusive marriage, or growing up in a really dangerous neighborhood, years of that hypervigilance and being in constant fight or flight mode are what cause people to have complex PTSD, and that is what I had. And it explained why I was abnormally depressed, why I was abnormally aggressive, why I was having these nightmares. And to this day I still have this nightmare, and it's always the same dream, that somehow we're back together and we're doing regular things, maybe driving in the car, and my ex-husband's driving and the kids are in the back seat and I'm in the passenger seat, and I'm just going, how did I get back here? Why are we back together? What's going on? And there's this energy coming off of him, which I'm now not used to. Back then I was used to it, but now I recognize it as really draining and chaotic and almost demonic. And so I'm freaking out because I can't stand to be around this energy anymore. And I'm trying to figure out how to get out of there. And then I always wake up in a cold sweat, and then I'm happy that it was just a dream and it's not my reality anymore. But it still traumatizes me to this day. I still have these dreams all the time. So, with that being said, and going back to my second cancer diagnosis, my current doctor said that it's very unusual for you to beat cancer and then it presents itself 8 years later. Normally there's a 5-year window. And if you are cancer free for 5 years, you are, well, if you're in remission for 5 years, you're considered cancer free. So for my cancer to present itself again after 8 years was unusual. And what the doctor thinks happens is there was a catalyst and there were these leftover cells floating around from the first time I had it. And something happened to create an environment for them to take hold, this time in my lung. And I believe that the stress and the trauma that came after my divorce, just like the stress and the trauma of my marriage, are what caused that cancer to come back. And as crazy as this sounds, another reason that I did not want to make this video is because now that I understand the evil motive behind this person, I didn't want to give him credit, knowing that his goal was to destroy me. I did not want to give him credit for this. But I did not know when I married him that people like him existed. And when I started to see the signs, I didn't recognize them for what they were because I didn't know what a narcissist was. And it didn't make sense to me that there were people like that in this world. So I stayed way too long and I got worn down emotionally, mentally, physically by this parasite, this vampire. And it's like that movie Independence Day, where the aliens move from one planet to the next and they suck them dry of their resources. And once they've obliterated the planet, they just move on to the next host planet and they suck that one dry of its resources. That's what these people do to you. That's why when you're around certain toxic people, after you get away from them, you feel drained. You feel drained every time you're near them because they are almost literal vampires. They're draining you of your energy and your life force. That is what they do. So the reason I'm telling you all of this is because had I had the information that I'm sharing with you right now, I could have avoided this fate. But I didn't, and I didn't recognize it for what it was. So this message might be to a select few people, but if you have someone in your life who is draining you, if you have someone who's manipulative, if you have someone who's constantly lying, constantly taking and not giving anything back, you need to take it seriously because these people can ultimately kill you. And I know it sounds dramatic, but I'm not being dramatic. All I can say is that you have one life. You get one spin around this planet Earth, and you have to cherish it. And if anyone is taking away from the goodness in your life, you have to get away from that person. I don't care if it's your mom, brother, husband, child, best friend. It doesn't matter who it is. If you have this kind of person, just understand how dangerous they can be to your health, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And don't do what I did. Don't stay. Don't try to fix it. Take care of yourself. Nobody is worth your physical health. Nobody's worth your mental and emotional health. Take care of yourself at all costs. So that's really all that I wanted to say. I know it got heavy, but I had to get it out there. And I know it's going to resonate with somebody. And I just hope that if it does, that you take a different path and that you take it seriously and save yourself. So that's going to be it for today. And thank you again for